I'm on my way to interview an owner of an interesting car. I'm on my way to Pheasant Wood Racetrack to interview Rob about his old racing car. Now, it's about 250 k's down the road, so I'll see you in a minute. I'm here having a chat with Rob about this wonderful looking Bugatti. Now tell me a little bit about this car.
Jim, well, this car started life in 1924 as a Type 39 Bugatti, 1.5 litre straight 8. And it was built for the French Grand Prix. And the rules for the Grand Prix that year was 1.5 litre two-seater sports cars. After competing in the team of 3 at the Grand Prix in France, the car came out to Australia and raced at the early Grand Prix at Phillip Island and Australian Grand Prix, and actually won the 1931 Australian Grand Prix.
Really?
So it was a very fast car at that time. And then in 1932 it tried to repeat that feat and the engine blew up. The little 1.5 litre 8-cylinder by that stage was 5 or 6 years old, and eventually it just gave up and flew to pieces. So there's nothing they could do with the car. The car was by that stage an out-of-date Grand Prix car. Parts wouldn't, if they were available, wouldn't be any good anyway. The car was already superseded by factory models. So what they did, or Jack Day in Melbourne did, was buy a brand new Ford V8 and put a Ford V8 in it. So it was the very first car in Australia ever to have a Ford V8 fitted to it.
Yeah.
And so it became a very fast, reliable car with a standard Ford V8 in it. But the extra torque damaged the gearbox, so the gearbox was replaced. And then the extra torque that went through the gearbox so the extra torque that went through the gearbox and then eventually blew up the rear axle as well.
Yeah.
So the car went through a succession of changes and was still quite reliable with a standard Ford V8 in it, and raced at South Australia, and it was set up with headlights. The headlights were set up through these holes.
Oh, yeah.
And the car went from Melbourne to South Australia to race, towing a little Bugatti. It was such a reliable car that we could tow on the end of a rope. They didn't have trailers in those days, and then towed the Bugatti back. It raced in South Australia and towed back again. So that was before the war, and then during the war they decided to convert it, the Bugatti body, which is still a two-seater body from the 1924 Grand Prix days, into a single-seater. So they narrowed the body in. You can see the body stepped in on the sides, and they narrowed the whole section in to make it a single-seater.
So just back to the engine for a second. Yeah. Was that an old side valve V8?
It is a side valve Ford V8.
Oh, it is now still?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So during the war they converted to a single-seater. But straight after the war, a bloke by the name of Jack Murray, he later became known as Gelignite Jack Murray.
Yeah.
He flew to Melbourne, which was a bit of a feat in itself in 1947. And drove the car back on the highway from Melbourne to Sydney. Right. Just like this. Right. Drove it back on the highway, and it was quite reliable. He ran it at Bathurst as a DM special, which was Dave Murray special, and it was very good, but then Jack Murray, being the larrikin he was, decided to hot it up.
Yep, yep.
They put the twin carburetors on a slightly later model, the 39 model engine, and it's boiled ever since.
Yep.
It's been too much heat, too much energy for the radiator, and it's been unreliable, but it's very fast for a little while.
Yeah.
Right. So Jack Murray was a real larrikin. He used to start races and really didn't care if he won because it was embarrassing because he was an amateur Olympic wrestler. As an amateur, he couldn't get prize money for sport of any kind. So if he won, he gave the money back anyway. So if he didn't finish the race, it didn't matter. But he went out there, went as fast as he could for a little while, and had a good time.
Yeah.
And so he did actually win what was the New South Wales Grand Prix at one stage in about 1949, I think. And then by 1954, the car was well and truly out of date.
Yeah.
And it just went into storage at Jack Murray's garage at Bondi, Curlew Street, Bondi.
Right.
And I saw the car there at that stage, and I thought, well, there's not enough Bugatti in it anymore. The engine's gone, the gearbox is gone, the dip's gone, right? But then as a 21-year-old, I had the money to buy it. I think it was £200. And, but I really wanted a Bugatti.
Yeah.
And then as my interests changed, I'm more and more involved in historic racing, and I realised what a fabulous car it was. So literally 50 years later, when I was 71, I bought the car for a lot more than £200.
Yeah.
So that's, and then so I've had that for 7 or 8 years now, and I'm gradually making it reliable. It's always been fast.
Yeah.
But with the poor little Bugatti chassis was designed for an aluminium engine this long, 1.5 litres.
Yeah.
And it's got 4.5 litres of cast iron in it.
Yeah.
And a very heavy gearbox and a very heavy diff. And then heavy brakes went on to deal with the power. And then heavy wheels went on instead of the original skinny wheels. So the whole car got out of balance.
Yeah.
Where it started off with a Bugatti where you could steer with your thumb and finger like this. Now, of course, Jack Murray's amateur status as an Olympic person was as a wrestler.
Yeah.
So as a wrestler, he probably didn't notice how impossibly heavy the car was to steer.
Yeah.
Right. So but it is a genuine piece of Australian history. Australian Grand Prix winning car, and it's been metamorphosis through the years, but it still retains that character and that identity. So it recognised by the Confederation of Australian Motorsport as the car that won the 1931 Grand Prix.
Right.
So it's a very unique and famous car. I'm the current custodian of it. When I've got it sorted out, I'll probably be too old to use it properly and I'll have to buy something slower.
Yeah.
That should do you.
Yeah. Now, so you could say it's basically gone from a European finesse to brute force.
Absolutely. Yeah. Black, yeah.
So, okay.
BF and BI.
When something goes wrong with this thing, where do you start? You can't go down to Repco and buy a whatever. Now, you can make some things, pistons and things, but what about a distributor cap? I assume it has one.
This car actually runs a magneto.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And of course, magnetos are still very current in drag racing.
Yeah.
So magneto parts are available these days. So that's quite fortunate.
Yeah.
The hot rodders, the traditional hot rodders in America, are still fascinated by side valve forwards.
Yep.
So there's plenty of parts available for the engine.
Yep.
Right? The gearbox itself is a pre-selector gearbox. So you actually pre-select the gear when you want it.
Right.
You start off in first gear, and while you're driving in first gear, you pre-select second.
Yeah.
And when you want second, you press the gear change pedal.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have a clutch.
Yep.
If you're going down the straight in top gear, 200 kilometres an hour, you pre-select second or third, depending on how big the corner is. And when you get into that corner, you kick the gear change pedal, and you've immediately got that gear.
Right. Okay. Yep.
And then you pre-select the next gear for the next corner.
Okay. That would take a bit of getting
It takes
used
a
to.
bit of getting used to, but it's such a delight because you can have two hands on the steering wheel through the corners.
Yeah,
You're not trying to dig for a gear change. Between, in the case of a centre seater, between your legs. Right, to find the gear change. So it works very well. But the pre-selected gearboxes, unfortunately, are very heavy units. So they fell out of favour. But they're a delight to race with, that's for sure.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that little chat about this Bugatti.
Well, I'm delighted that people are interested in it because it is a fabulous piece of Australian history.
I'm Quack McMullard. Bye for now.
Thank you, Jim.